Welcome to the Have a Chess podcast. My name is Ms. Bahak, and on this show, I break down the best ideas on high agency thinking and skill acquisition. And in today's episode, I'm excited to talk about a book that I discovered about a decade ago. And it had an impact on me back when I first read it and implemented it, but it has had an even bigger impact now that I have revisited some of the same concepts years later. And the book is called The Four Agreements. You may have heard of this. It is one that I find is worth rereading every year to every 2 years. Because when I first read this, it was on Audible. So I remember I would play it in the background all the time, mostly because there were certain things about the four agreements that Don Miguel Ruiz mentions in here that made the book seem accessible, right? But it also logically makes sense when you go through some of these in a way that your more reptilian brain can wrap its head around, where it's, okay, this is not just some woo-woo, this is some stuff that I can apply logistically in day-to-day life. So let's dive into why I wanted to cover this book in the first place, and also what made me actually read it about a decade ago and then resurface it a decade later. I wanted to take some time to highlight this one on the show because no matter how much knowledge you have and how many external obstacles and problems you chop out of your way, I found myself in that position when I first read this book where I was like, wow, I should be pretty excited and happy about all of this, right? And then when I tried to continue to level up, every time I tried to level up in my life, doing things that were a little out of reach, that I wasn't quite ready to do, but then I knew I wanted to pursue. This was the next level for me. Before I could even give myself a fair shot at going after achieving any of those things, I think the first thing that I needed to battle was all of the self-limiting beliefs that pop up. And what's sad is that a decade later, especially after achieving some of those things that I wanted, it's like you realize how much self-limiting beliefs actually contribute to you getting that or not. Sure, there are a bunch of other external circumstances and things at play, but many of those do not get a chance to even pose themselves as an actual threat to you getting what you want as much as a self-limiting belief. And the reason you should take self-limiting beliefs very seriously is because your mind does not go any further the second that there is a self-limiting belief present, right? So your mind will shut down and stop asking questions around how something is possible. What other routes can I try? How would this look if this were easy, right? These classic questions that may lead to better answers or may lead to an understanding about yourself. You find that you don't even give yourself the space to do that, right? Because you might have a self-limiting belief that is so ingrained, it's just blocking your mind from even going there, let alone acting on it in any way. So I figured this would be applicable to anybody who is using this show to get what they want, whether it is acquiring a new skill or leveling up your thinking. I think that one of the things you will run into, if you haven't already, are the self-limiting beliefs, and it will greatly limit the potential that a lot of your harder skills have, right? So I've mentioned this in previous episodes. There's hard skills and soft skills, and often the soft skills allow some of those harder skills to actually flourish. And this is very common. You can think of any corporate scenario where you have 5 people who all do maybe the same thing, right? Their hard skills are pretty much the same, but let's say 1 or 2 of them have terrible attitudes, right? They're just not enjoyable to be around. Hey, that's not necessarily a hard skill. That is something you can see on their job requirements, right? But it's a soft skill that's this kind of unspoken thing in the room that is really holding hostage all of the other skills that they have. And even if they are the smartest one there, that only lasts so long, right? And on a similar note, I just don't want that to happen to you because I have experienced that. And the cost of it is just it taking months or years longer to get to what you wanted in the first place. So the first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. And this is 2 parts, right? One is with yourself and one is with others. And so it reads, speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. I love that it starts with words because if you think about it, this is what makes up some of the self-limiting beliefs, right? It is the fact that there are a series of words that have made themselves pretty prominent in you thinking them over and over. And some of them might be very subconsciously ingrained and some of them might be on top of mind in a way that you can actually word it, right? The reason I love the first agreement is because if you actually implement it, even if it's for half a day, you really consciously try to implement this agreement, you will find that there's a lot less to limit you, right? Because if you are not using your words to, let's say, gossip or to talk badly about other people, make fun of how things are being done or how things are going, well, guess what? You have more words left over to deploy in other ways. And the idea here is instead of the default being that your words are there to damage you, right? And to yell at you and remind you over and over about a certain mistake you made or something you could have done better. It's being able to extract the utility out of those words so you can go, okay, yep, this was the mistake I made. This is what I should have done better. But then being able to let those words be a tool and not something that's now hurting you and preventing you from continuing to move forward. I believe we have around 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And so if you think about what are those thoughts made up of? They're made up of words typically, right? You are thinking the same things over and over, and often we are. A couple thousand, I think up to 12,000 thoughts a day are a lot of the same things. But when you deconstruct a thought, it is happening with words, right? And so the idea here is to change your relationship with words. Don't use it to hurt yourself anymore. Avoid using it to hurt others if you can. And at the same time, begin to entertain the idea of what it would look like if your words actually helped you. And I think this is more of a foreign concept to most of us than we actually think. It makes sense on a surface level. Yeah, use your words to help you. That's what affirmations are, right? But how many people actually execute on that? How many people actually live by that? I find this particularly helpful for if you are somebody that's very self-critical and you're hard on yourself, which a lot of us are. This can help balance things out a bit in a way where you don't need to suffer as much or beat yourself up as much en route to where you want to go. You can do it in a way that is, using that first agreement to help you. So the second agreement is don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. This rule is so potent, but I remember just butting my head up against this over, and it's very hard to actually implement and live by. But I find that if you keep trying, eventually you experience, just like meditation, a couple moments of glimmer or like flow, right? You experience just a couple seconds, a couple minutes of flow, if that, but we spend all of this time trying to get there. Why? Because it's worth it, right? It is worthwhile. And so getting to a place where we're not taking things personally is very worth it, in my opinion, because it gives you such power and strength and confidence when you're not really rocked by something that someone else might do to you, might say to you. Because nowadays, people do take things very personally. Just think about the last time you were on the road in traffic, right? It's you see somebody cut someone else off, and the way that it can make people react is, this person was out for me, you know what I mean? And so this is happening day in and day out in small moments and big moments. And I find that it actually can probably lead to more loneliness than is necessary. Because if you are taking everything personally, it makes you feel very like other people are out to get you, they're against you. It doesn't feel good. I find that implementing this second agreement of not taking things personally has to begin with really separation of tasks, right? This is their task, this is my task. And so your task is being impeccable with your word, don't take things personally, and execute some of these other agreements. Their task, right? Other people's task is that as well, right? And how they react, what they say, what they do is not always something that you're responsible for, right? It's not something you should have said something different or acted different in order to get a different result. And I find that in today's day and age, there's so many moments where we can take things personally. And we're seeing people around us all the time take things personally, right? People who don't even know who you are, you might think that they're against you because of the way that they looked at you or didn't look at you, the way they said something or didn't say something. And so it's very easy in today's day and age to take things personally and be triggered by that. And it robs a lot of headspace and a lot of peace and this calm that is already there, but it can be very disrupted when we begin to actually take things personally. And I challenge you to actually don't just execute on this, but notice for the next day, next 2 days, notice how many little tiny moments come up where somebody doesn't reply to you or somebody doesn't react the way that you wanted them to react. How often is that tendency to take things personally coming up for you? So, of course, being immune to the opinions and action of others is pretty hard to do, but it is worthwhile, and it's one agreement that is definitely worth chipping away at to get to a place where you can experience it. Because once you experience this, I'm not in this state 24/7, even though I am aware of this rule, right? But I think once I experienced it, even a couple glimmers of, oh, this is what flow feels like, right? I can now go, wow, so this is what I've been missing out on, right? How much energy have I wasted? How many hours have I wasted running these loops, taking things personally when, wow, look how much clearer, how much more peaceful my mind is when I'm not. So commit to getting yourself to a place where you can experience even 10 seconds or a minute of that, because sometimes when you do, you get addicted to that part, and that's enough to help you weather the storm to experience that again. Now, this third agreement, I'm ashamed to admit that this is also another one that's been very hard for me, and maybe even the hardest out of this entire list, and it is don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. The reason this third agreement is so difficult to execute is because on one hand, you need assumptions to survive, right? It's how we make sure to leave for work on time a little earlier than we need to, or it's how we know if somebody might be mad at us and we need to apologize. It's how we know that, oh, we may have been rude and maybe I should clarify what I meant, right? On one hand, assumptions are necessary to our survival, right? It's how we have been able to prepare for bad things that may have wiped us out, right? You have to make tons of assumptions. And particularly like when I was doing stand-up comedy, joke, every line, you're keeping assumptions in mind. What are they thinking when I say this? And how do I hit the second, third, or fourth assumption, the one that they don't even see coming, it's not even on top of their mind. And you'll notice, like, the second that, a stranger walks into a room, you will start making assumptions, right? You'll start trying to put a story together. Who are they? Why are they here? What are they doing? All of that begins to happen. To me, assumptions are the kind of thoughts that are the most difficult to stop because your brain is trained to do that. And in many ways, your brain has evidence that, hey, this is a skill that has helped us. This has helped us survive and thrive. So don't stop doing that. But of course, on the other hand, it is worthwhile to figure out how to control these assumptions, because if you don't, then your mind is constantly running with assumptions on things that may or may not be true. And this is wasting a lot of headspace, a lot of hardware, a lot of your potential. On the other hand, assumptions are something you want to control, because if you don't, notice how many extra thoughts this creates, right? So the fact that, let's say an animal came into the room and you were like, oh, there's 10 thoughts that were immediately initiated because you're now making assumptions about whose cat this is, where it came from, what it's doing here, versus if you can have the courage to clarify, that goes a long way. Because remember, in today's day and age, we're nervous to look stupid. We're nervous to ask questions to clarify things because we'd rather assume. It's safer to assume, because you calling it out can sometimes create drama. It can create sadness. And many times, some people don't even want to know the answer, the real answer, the truth, right? So they'll just assume. They'd rather assume instead of clarify and ask, hey, are you mad at me? It's like, we'd rather assume, oh, this person's mad at me, and live in that story rather than feeling the discomfort of calling it out and asking. And because there are so many things that are like nonverbal or implicit in today's day and age and how we communicate, it becomes even more important to, one, limit the amount of assumptions that you're making. So don't be running them all day long so it destroys your happiness, but also know which assumptions have the potential to wreck you. Yeah, I really just love how he includes, find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want, because it does take that, both to ask questions and clarify when you might look stupid, but also to actually truly express what you want instead of just giving someone else something that will make them make assumptions. And you're hoping, oh, I hope they make assumptions and see that I wanted this or needed this, when, hey, it's much more worthwhile if you can be direct and figure out how to communicate what you're thinking. This rule is almost freeing, because if you are somebody that works in a role where you have to make assumptions all day, you're predicting things, you're assuming things all day long, you want to have some breaks and some moments. Maybe it's after work, maybe it's before work, like living in a space where there's very minimal assumptions going on. And I think part of this requires a bit of childlike curiosity, right? Like almost playing a little dumb, where, okay, if someone's rude to you in the grocery store, for example, this second agreement of don't take anything personally comes into play, right? But the third agreement also is at play here of don't make assumptions, because your brain is going to jump to all sorts of conclusions, right? Oh, if this person was rude to me in this scenario, then they are this kind of person, or they are rude in these other scenarios, or this is how I can expect to be treated by other people, right? There's dozens of assumptions that can form off of that one encounter. And so it's interesting to see how these play into each other, because if you implement the second agreement in that moment and you don't take anything personally, it does actually minimize the fact that there will be assumptions happening from that, right? Your brain will be just less likely to give it thought and headspace in the first place. Now, the fourth agreement is one of my favorites. It's always do your best. This is actually one of the easier ones to implement, I think, out of all of these, which is your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. The reason this is genius is because this is something I would be using with my coaching clients all the time. Because when you are training, whether it is for an event, a sport, or just, you're trying to add muscle or lose weight, you are going to have days where, hey, I feel fresh on Monday and Tuesday because they're workout number one, workout number two. But hey, by the time I get to Friday, okay, my energy levels are not the same. The work week has added up and it's beaten me down a bit. I have less in the tank to maybe give on Fridays. Or let's say that you're in week 3 of a training cycle. Typically, by the time you get to week 3, okay, now you're like all of week 1 and week 2 is adding up, right? You don't feel as fresh as maybe you did in week 1 of a training cycle. So in those moments, the weight on the bar is not the only metric that you can be using to judge yourself. Because if you do, you could seriously hurt yourself, right? If you're trying to go after the same thing in week 3 or on the tiredest, worst day of your week that you did on the freshest day. So I found this concept to work pretty effectively, because no matter on any given day, what's going on, what happened the day before, the moment before, choosing to do your best is almost a mental thing. It's an intention, right? On the day that is on your last training day of the week, you may not be actually able to hit the weight that you intended. So your best is changing from moment to moment, but what stays consistent in those moments, it's typically the intention that you have when you're feeling your best. Okay, I'm going for it. I'm crushing it. I'm going to do the best that I can. That shifts and changes a little bit when you are not feeling your best. Oh, I'm 10%, 20% not at my max potential today. But it's realizing that the effort is relative. So when you look at, let's say, two different people who have been working out, right? One is somebody who used to be a professional athlete, and one is somebody who is just got off the couch and is beginning to work out. The loads and the exercises and the challenges, the stimuli that they're using are going to be vastly different, right? But the intention of all of those challenges and stimuli is to get them to do what? To do their best. And so these two people, even though they have vastly different experience levels and abilities and strengths, can be doing their very best, doing completely different exercises. This person could be using 5 pounds on the bar. This person could have 400 pounds on the bar, right? But what they bring to that movement, to that moment, is what dictates, is that your best or is it not? And I think this is an underrated agreement, because when you choose to titrate your effort a little bit and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do my best, I'm going to do this really quickly, it creates opportunity and room for you to judge that later on or beat yourself up later on, especially if, let's say, that moment contributed to something that was unfavorable, right? Oh, I kind of half-assed this thing and I also didn't like the result that I got. It sucks to be able to go back and beat yourself up for, man, why didn't I push myself, do the best that I could, right? And so when you are in every moment choosing to do your best with what you have, you remove any opportunity for those kind of thoughts to come up, for that type of self-doubt to arise. So I hope how you can see, when you combine these 4 agreements, they have the ability to simplify a lot of what you are and aren't paying attention to, because 4 is pretty simple. It's not like there's 20 different rules you got to keep in mind. These are pretty memorable. Each of these agreements are literally less than 4 or 5 words, right? So it's something that you can come back to almost as a mantra. I urge you to start with one of these agreements that come a little more naturally to you, but that you can do with a little more intention. So maybe it is always do your best, or maybe it's be impeccable with your word. Pick one of those and go after it and try to feel the experience that comes with the focused application. And then second, pick an agreement that is actually tough for you. So for me, it is don't make assumptions, don't take anything personally, maybe, right? And so between those two, focus on taking one of those agreements and applying them throughout your day. Right? You could knock all of these out in a week, where every day you focused on a different agreement and you just notice, how does my day actually change when I incorporate this stuff? And I think some of the metrics that you're looking for to see, okay, are these agreements effective? Are they helping? Are they improving my day-to-day? Is by coming back to what we started this conversation with. There's likely a bigger skill or bigger goal that you actually want to achieve. And so part of it is, when you use this to help you get that, you can, okay, am I getting closer to achieving this goal? Am I getting there with more calm, more peace, more joy? Those are some of the things that you're going to be looking out for. And of course, have you overcome some of the self-limiting beliefs? And many times, when you find, oh no, I'm not getting closer, like there's still a lot of friction, I encourage you to come back to this and go, okay, which one of these 4 agreements am I ignoring? Which one am I not implementing? And remember, because there's only 4, if there is 2, like you're ignoring 50% of what's on here, it gives your brain a good anchor point to go, oh, yep, you're making a lot of assumptions today. Or you know what? Today, you're taking everything personally, and that's really throwing you off your normal base. The way I'm going to look at this for myself for the next decade, because for the first decade, it was like, oh, this will help me feel better. This will help me achieve what I want. But I almost like how on the back of the book here, he says the 4 agreements offer a powerful code of conduct. That is a great way to put it. So I hope this was useful for you. Remember, just to go over the 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So I hope this was helpful for where you're at right now in this moment. And I hope there's at least one agreement that you can take right away and apply the second that you turn this off. I appreciate you hanging out, and I wish you the best of luck in whatever you're going after. Thanks for hanging out and spending time with me today, and I will see you on the next one.